If you're thinking about buying a home in Kansas City in 2025, you've almost certainly noticed home prices increasing over the last couple of years, mortgage rates skyrocketing. You've probably also seen the limited number of options on the market. And over that time period, we've made dozens and dozens of market updates. We've combed through hundreds of articles. Unfortunately, the expert consensus remains the same. Mortgage rates are to blame. They're the big problem. They're going to come down soon. The issue is that nobody knows when that will happen. So in this video, we're gonna break down the dark truth about the Kansas City real estate market in 2025 that you need to know if you plan on buying a home this year.
By the way, if we haven't met yet, my name is Jordan. This is Nick. We help people buy and build homes all across Kansas City. Now, I know that there's been a lot of people calling for a housing market crash because they want to see those home prices come down. Now, we're going to show you what is most likely to happen with the Kansas City housing market here in 2025.
And without further ado, part number one, the Kansas City real estate market crash. Now, we promised we'd give you the dark truth about the real estate market here in Kansas City. And this is one important part of it. According to this article from Yahoo Finance, it's titled, "When Will the Housing Market Crash Again?" And it goes on to say, there are no signs the housing market's about to crash. The economic outlook, the expectations are very positive. They mentioned some things that I know, Jordan, we've discussed at length, like the rate of unemployment, still very low. People have their jobs, they can pay their mortgages. They do mention that the market is expected to rebound from some of the lows in 2023. We'll discuss exactly how much here in just a second. And then they go on to mention things like low mortgage costs. Like most people that have a mortgage right now, I think it's what, below 6%?
Yeah, below 4.
Below 4%. So there's a disincentive for them to sell their home and buy another one. They also mention record levels of home equity, right? We see those prices increase. And because of that, we're not seeing any foreclosures. And the amount that prices would have to decrease to constitute a crash is just very, very unlikely given a lot of those factors. Now, they go on to state that although mortgage rates probably won't plummet this year, they should drop a little compared to 2024. And again, that brings us back to the introduction. How much will they drop? And that's exactly what we'll answer in part number two.
But for now, the reason the real estate market is unlikely to crash, especially true for Kansas City, is that even though our prices have been going up here, our typical home price across the metro is still lower than the national average, making it a more affordable place to live.
That's right. And that's one reason. A couple others, I think the housing shortage, we're seeing fewer options on the market. Even for new construction, we're seeing fewer spec homes being built, and each one can certainly have an impact. I think the third reason, a lot of this has to do with mortgage rates, and we'll get to that in a second. A lot of people, like we mentioned, are locked in mortgage rates that are oftentimes well below 6%, in most cases below 4%. So there's just no incentive to sell and buy right now. And then the final thing that's important to know is even though prices are decreasing in some markets across the country, they're seeing some corrections from all of that price growth over the last several years, it's just not happening in Kansas City. For example, we'll put some data on the screen. According to the Kansas City Regional Association of Realtors, prices increased in 2024 about 2.9%. We've also cross-referenced this with Zillow's price index, so this estimate, their median home values, and they say it's up about 3.1%, which, Jordan, that's great news because that's on pace with the average appreciation we typically see when there's not a ton of inflation or a ton of stimulus happening. So that is certainly a healthy sign.
Now, Nick, so if the probability of a crash is unlikely and home prices are still going up, I mean, what does that mean for the housing market here in Kansas City for 2025?
I think it means a couple things, but the most important one right now, we'll put this chart on the screen. This is from Business Insider. This shows the expected price increases in 2025 across the country. And we'll tell you what that means for Kansas City. It says Fannie Mae around 3.6%, National Association of Realtors about 1.8%, Mortgage Bankers Association around 1.3%. So they're projecting almost slower growth in prices than we saw this year. However, we did point out, this is about the nation as a whole, the entire country. Here in Kansas City, the market's proved quite resilient, and home prices here are slightly under that national average. So Jordan, I'm going to have you give your gut reaction to this in a second. My gut says we're probably going to be somewhere between 2.5% with the potential for upwards of 5% price increases here in Kansas City.
Yep. So I was going to be conservative, and I was just thinking 2 to 4.
Yep.
And I think that's a healthy, normal range, especially with interest rates in that 6% range for 2025.
I think those are definitely both in the ballpark. The real question is, what does that mean for you in your decision to buy or sell a home this year, or maybe putting it off for another year or two? And we'd love to give you a specific answer. So any questions about buying, building, selling a home in Kansas City, we'd love to help. Give us a phone call, text message, email, and we'll set you up for success. Moving on to part number 2. It's all about mortgage rates and when they might finally drop.
All right, so as you can see this graph on the screen here, this is an interest rate chart. Currently, interest rates are just over 7% for that 30-year mortgage. Now, it's been quite the roller coaster the last 3 or 4 months. Back in September, they dipped down to like 6%. We kind of saw a little flurry of people getting into the market. But people just don't really know what to expect. It's just been extremely choppy.
That's right. And the articles and the experts, the consensus has been those are going to start going down. And as soon as they do, they go right back up to 7%. So what do you do about it? We found another article. Disclose this one is also from Yahoo Finance. We went through a lot of we like to diversify the sources, but I think this one made a good point. One of them was, the lock-in effect, the idea that people are locked into their current mortgage at lower rates than they could get today. It says that might finally be easing this year as life events like births, deaths, mortgages, marriages, divorces, job changes. As those things continue, mortgage rates should probably continue to drift a little bit lower. We should see some more inventory. But here's really what I think makes a lot of sense. It says, survey suggests that consumers would need mortgage rates to reach about 5.5% before they step off the sidelines en masse. And then it says, but mortgage rates in the 6 to 6.2% range this year were enough to spur an increase in buying and selling, and those levels remain possible this year. So with that, if you read between the lines, what they're really saying is people have adopted this new normal of higher rates. And even though it's not hitting like a 5.5%, which would be ideal for them, they're willing to pull the trigger and make the decision to move at around 6.2%. And all of those things could have knock-on effects for how much inventory is on the market, how many options are available, your ability to negotiate, and whether it actually makes sense to buy or sell a home this year. Now, we did pull some predictions, but unfortunately, there's not a lot of certainty in these. Again, as soon as those rates go down, Jordan, they shoot right back up again. And there's a little mixed consensus here. So this is from US News and World Report. It shows basically all of the major people, their expert opinion about where we might see mortgage rates. And really, there's not much of a change. I think the only one that really stands out is the National Association of Realtors, which obviously they have an incentive to try and get people to buy homes. So, of course, they'd say 5.9% and be an extreme outlier. But all the other ones, they're in like the mid to low 6%. And that brings us to part number 3, which is the dark truth about the Kansas City real estate market in 2025. And there are 3 points that are important to understand. The first one is that it does not make sense to count on mortgage rates coming down. And the reason why is because it's way harder to time the market, and especially given the volatility we've seen, they go down, they go right back up again. It doesn't make sense to hedge your bet on something that is that volatile. And that might be one of the big reasons why a lot of people are kind of accepting these higher mortgage rates as the new normal. The nice thing about this is, Jordan, we've got some downward pressure. We got some momentum, some possibility for those rates to come down. It's just unlikely, and I wouldn't make it a big part of the decision to buy or sell.
The second thing that you need to know for 2025 is that home prices are going to continue to climb, especially right here in Kansas City. So if you can see this map here on the screen, these little dark green and light green dots right there in the middle of the country, that is Jackson County, that's Kansas City. And this is a Zillow home price forecast, and it's looking like they're calling for 4%. And that's right in line with what we believe is likely to happen.
Yep. The good news is, even though there are going to be projected price increase, we're going to see that appreciate. It's not skyrocketing the same way it was in like 2022 or 2021. It's slower. It's within the bounds of sustainable and normal. And while that's nice to hear, it also means there's a cost to waiting, right? There's a cost to waiting for those unpredictable mortgage rates to come down, which is, 3 to 4% per year, potentially even more than that, depending on what we see in 2025.
Yeah, and that could add up quite a bit, $5, 10, 15, $20,000 to the price of a home. And another reason for these home price increases as well is going to be just the population growth in Kansas City, and we still have such low inventory.
And that leads us to the third thing that you need to know, which is that the housing shortage in Kansas City, it's also likely to persist, but there will be some improvements. Again, people are getting more accustomed to those higher mortgage rates. They're becoming more normal. We had a lot of life events that will continue to happen irrespective of what happens with home prices, the mortgage rates, the economy, et cetera. And while we are slated to see a little bit more inventory creep into the market, it's just not going to be comparable to where we were in 2019 for another several years. So while this won't resolve the housing shortage, it will make it a little bit easier. And even in very competitive markets, it is possible, depending on how you structure your home search, the parts of town you're looking at, the boxes that you're trying to check, it is possible to find outliers where you can negotiate, where you don't have to compete with other people. And that's exactly what we would want to shield you from and make sure that you have the option to do. So any questions about buying, building, selling a home in the Kansas City suburbs, it's a phone call, text message, email. We'd love to set you up for success, help you get a great deal. And if you're on the fence and you're just not sure, does it make sense to buy right now? Should I wait? Go ahead and reach out. If you found this helpful, we'd love to make it specific to you and your situation, because that is what matters more than what mortgage rates could do, what home prices could do, or anything else. So that's all for this video. Let us know down in the comments, do you have any bold predictions for the housing market in Kansas City in 2025? Make sure to subscribe for future market updates. Hit the like button. We're going to put a video on the screen right here. If you're relocated to Kansas City, this is the video that I'd watch. It breaks down the whole area, the process for doing that. And we're also going to put the video YouTube thinks you'd enjoy the most right here. So click either there or here, and we'll see you on the other side.